Welcome to Zen Footsteps. My podcast is designed to invite you to explore new perspectives and challenge the way you see the world. Through engaging conversations with thought-provoking guests, we're going to delve into the idea that you can transform your thinking and inspire personal growth. From redefining success to uncovering unconventional paths to fulfillment, each episode is a step towards expanding your mind and embracing the journey of discovery. So join us as we walk alongside innovators, thinkers, and change makers who can help you see life in a whole new light. Morning, guys. Welcome to another great episode of Zen Footsteps. I've got Jessica Freitas with me. Now, she's a biologist and educator. She's turned her own kind of healing journey into a mission to help women feel at home in their own bodies again. Now, after years and years of studying and teaching biology, in fact, nutrition and human physiology, she began to notice the same pattern, not just in herself, but in friends, students, and even while traveling to other countries. Women everywhere were struggling with the same frustrations around food, energy, and health. Jessica, welcome to Zen Footsteps.
Thank you so much for having me.
That's an absolute pleasure. So tell me about you. Who is Jessica? Who are you?
Well, I was a little military brat girl, basically, here in the U.S. I live on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. I feel kind of like a transplant here because I still have a little bit of that Southern accent that comes from my mom, but my dad's Portuguese. So I also have some of that New England type of culture in me because I grew up in that area as well on a military base. And then as I got older, I started moving. I always loved animals and things like that as a kid. And I just moved towards biology slowly but surely. And one summer I ended up volunteering for an animal research center, and they were a nonprofit. And I worked with some sea turtles there, and I helped rehabilitation with them. And I fell in love with biology. And that was when I was like 33 years old, and I'm 46 now. So it's not been it was later in life that I really started to actually evolve. And from there, it was pretty much uphill at that point. I went to grad school for biology, got that. I taught elementary school for 8 years. So I've taught the babies, and then I've taught all the way up to high school. And now I teach college full time, nutrition. I started working with my students. And this is what really got me was listening to my friends talk about where they were struggling. And this was like 10 years ago, 12 years ago, about how when they were eating, things were not working for them, but were working for other people. And when I started college, kind of jump back a little bit. When I started college, I lived with some of my friends that were in the Marine Corps that were family friends, and they pushed me really hard. And I started working out, and I got competition level, and I never knew I could get that far. So the fad diet thing started coming up, and I started watching some of those people in college really, really struggle with what was working for them on specific fad diets. I always did well, and I didn't understand like the baseline of like looking at your blood type, because obviously I hadn't finished college yet and knew all the details behind it. But when I started looking at everybody's complaints about what they were struggling with, and then I ran across the teachings of Peter J. D'Adamo, that he did all of these teachings for 30 plus years and came out with all of this wonderful information about blood type. And I'm not the type of person that actually wants to take one stigma and stick it to everyone and believe that this whole thing is the only thing that's true. But I said, there's got to be something in the baseline of this that's causing people to be really successful and others to really fail at it. So my main thing was, okay, I'm going to look at blood type O because that's what I am, which is about 46% of the population of the entire world. And then the other ones fall behind that all the way with AB is the lowest, being like 4 to 5%. So I wanted to see those differences. When I went into O, I realized this is why people are really doing well on carnivore as an O, because this is what they thrive on. Their gut microbiome is so acidic, it just burns through red meat and really gives these people the fuel that they need. But when you take like a person that's an A over here, you would notice, like I had a friend that told me, I started losing my hair after a couple of months, but I felt great at first. And I said, okay, I wonder why that's happening. When I started looking at it, I was like, well, what did you change initially in the diet? They went from an ultra processed diet straight to carnivore. So as they were doing that, they were so successful because they were just eliminating processed foods, which was a bonus for the body to begin with. But the body started to regress because it wasn't the biochemistry path for that particular body style. And that's why it didn't last. So all of those things, as I started looking into it, and stop me when you're ready for the next question because I am kind of long-winded.
No, no, no,
But
no.
it got me.
It's great. You just keep going. I want you to, I'm like absorbing. I've got so many questions in my head, so you just keep going, keep going.
But and you can just stop me when you're ready,
That's
but
okay.
it's just me explaining how it all rounded out for me. And that started when I was younger, but as I started to evolve, get older, as I kept moving forward with everything I was enjoying, my spiritual journey was actually changing along with all of that. And I didn't even know it because I didn't know much about spirituality. And there were so many other things that fell into this, going from the baseline of me finding out about Peter J. D'Adamo and looking at all of his teachings. Then I go and I find Candy Frazier, who teaches about insulin, that goes right along with it, but it's another direction. And then I start looking at people that are biohackers like Dave Asprey. I find all of that. And then you bring in other people that have spirituality with that, with the nervous system, and it all just connected. And it was like a light bulb went off for me. And I was like, I have found the gaps in these fad diets. And I was like, people are not talking about this. Even doctors are not talking about this. And I was like, no one's going to believe me, but they have to, like it was in my
Yeah.
head, but they have to because this is so good. And what I did is I started experimenting on myself because it had to be real for me to want to put it out there because I did not, I didn't want an aspect of it to be phony when I was trying to help the collective. I was like, if I'm going to help people, it needs to be accurate. So I started using myself, and then I used a few of my friends that I taught school with. And I was like, I need you to do this for me and tell me what happened. So they bring it all back to me. And as I was getting some of that information,
Mm.
and then I've traveled to 8 different countries. As I was traveling, I would travel solo, and I was asking other people, especially women, hey, how do you feel? What do you eat? What are your natural processes every day that you go through when you're taking in nutrition? Maybe I didn't word that right, but somewhere in that nature. And I would find that whatever their blood types were, I wasn't going to push mine on them. I just wanted their feedback. And I would get like, okay. And then I would ask them, hey, are you okay with talking to me about some alternatives that may help? And if they were okay with it, I would share. If they weren't, I just left it, but I
That's,
kept that
yeah.
for myself
I think that's the kind of the number one rule, isn't it? It's about, I've come across constantly
always.
people I want to help. And what I realized is inside me, it's almost like I'm bursting to say, look, there is another way, there's another way. But the problem is, it's not what you realize is that if a soul is incarnated into this world to learn, and a soul has a path, in some ways, by helping when unsolicited, you're actually stopping their lesson. So even though you think you're helping them, you're not, because it's
What
fascinating.
a great thing.
Because I looked at one of the things you said, there was 33. Now that number comes up again and again and again. And if you look at 33 from a biological, spiritual context, there's 33 vertebrae in the spine. And if we look at Christ was 33 when he was crucified, for example. So if you look at 33 as the lower on the coccyx being the base nature of man, and then as we go up and we ascend the spiritual paths and the chakras, each vertebra we go up, guess what? It going from a thick vertebra, it gets thinner and thinner and thinner and thinner because we ascend up into higher consciousness and a lower density level. So when you said 33, I'm like, yep, happened to me. Every single person I come across that discovers the spiritual connection with the biology and the physical, um, it's fascinating. So I want to just, I understand a lot of these things you're talking about, but for our listeners, let's talk about lectins. Let's talk about Diamo's work and lectins and his kind of principle of lectin response within food. So can you explain a little bit about, obviously a lot of people listening here, they don't have the background that you and I have. Okay, none. So they don't understand what blood.
Mhm.
I'm a blood type A, classic blood type A, my build. I'm more vegetarian. I do better on vegetarian
Right.
diet, white meat only, chicken and turkey. So I get
Hmm.
it 100%. And I've been using this for years and with my patients. So let's go back to right to the beginning of Diama's work with lectins. Can you explain to kind of the viewers a little bit about those?
Yeah. So basically, what I explain is lectins are proteins that are in different, basically all your plants and within your meats and things like that too. But it's going to connect on your cells. You have receptors that are carbohydrates. So those proteins come in and attach to those carbohydrates. And when you've got the wrong receptors matching with lectins that don't match, that's where your problems are going to come in. And the thing is that every blood type, you're like, say, for instance, you're an O, or you're an A, like we are. So those specific glucose, like the antigens that are going to come in, basically, with the lectin, the antigens are 0 on an O, but they are A on A. They're going to match with the proteins or the lectins that come in that match those specific type of carbohydrates to match those proteins. Now, with that being said, also sometimes I was just listening to a lady that I was working with that said that she had a hard time being a vegan as a type A also, and she didn't understand how lectins work because she was eating all this plant material, but it wasn't the correct plant material that was built for type A. So, for instance, if I was like, broccoli is good for me, I can eat those because they're going to match up with the proteins, match up with my particular carbohydrates that are on my blood cells. But with her, that's not always the case. So I was trying to help her understand that depending on your blood type, your specific lectins are going to match your blood cells. Does that explain it
Yeah,
well enough?
it does, and this is the thing that I find fascinating about this was that when I understood I was a blood type A, for example, I really understood why was it that when I was hanging around with, back in the day with the guys and they were working out and muscles were just boof on them, whereas I had to work really, really hard to get any of that. And
Mhm.
I'm always slim. I don't even almost have to try to be slim, you know what I mean? But it's because the lectin response in me, I was just naturally drawn to foods that were blood type A foods. If I had meat, for example, it would just sit on my stomach. My acid levels were lower. And the one thing that's like
Right.
with blood type O's I come across, in the UK, definitely we have this, is the long-term acidity issues with blood type O's and the arthritis that
Mhm.
goes from that. Because obviously, if you get high acid and then you put acid on top of that, like orange juice, now the body's going, hold on a second, I've got to balance out now the minerals in the body because they're being taken from the acid. Guess where they take the minerals from? The bones, and so it's very difficult for people to make that jump because not everybody ultimately, when you give them the answer they need, wants to take on board the truth, right?
Correct. And I feel like there's a couple of other things too. And I wrote down even some notes to make sure I spoke about things when you ask questions, because like oxalates are another thing people have a hard time with. They're basically like they can build up in the tissues of the body, and they're a plant defense mechanism. And when you take in those oxalates, it's the same as the lectins would be. Uh, but this plant mechanism basically fights so that things in the wild are not eating it. But when it gets in your body, it can cause kidney stones, and it can cause just a buildup of, like, from beans and certain nightshades and things like that. But you also can match up with those as your blood type. And that's where people don't understand that aspect of understanding that lectins are not bad. Oxalates are not bad. They are just fitting. They're like a puzzle piece to match all of the receptors that are on your red blood cells. And if you're not matching those up to the correct foods, that's where your problem lies in. And I think is what the understanding part that they don't get is it's through an evolutionary trait is what's happening over time. Like O is the oldest, so we were more of those hunters, and that red meat is what gave us our nourishment. But as it branched off away from the equator later, you had people moving further north that had blood types A that were more of they had conventional farming and things like that going on. So it was easier for them to take on more of those vegetables, and they weren't as available for those O's that were closer to the equator in the beginning. So I guess I take on that biology standpoint, and I think some people don't want to accept it as much as because they think it's a belief system versus a biological system.
I agree, and that is a big issue, and I think what's something that you and I definitely share is that we're able to have the biology over here, but we can have the spiritual as well. And
Sure.
I think that there's this whole kind of idea that you have to be one or the other, right? And it's
Mm-hmm.
we are chemical, physical, and we're emotional. We need the two. And I think like you, when I came across blood typing, there was a little light bulb that went off in my head. And I thought, well, this is why I have this ability to keep going, because as a farmer with a blood type A, that's what I'm designed to do. I don't need the blood
Right.
type O acceleration, kill the prey, sleep like a lion, you know. And it's fascinating. And then the other thing I looked at too was that I don't know if you've heard this through the grapevine. I don't know how true it is, so it could be kind of urban myth. But I've heard there's an emergence of a new blood type. I don't know if you've heard about that.
Not yet. I have not.
Yeah, which would
I
make
am
make
still
sense.
that right, because as everybody evolves, it would make sense that something new would come about. Because I would think, honestly, and this is just me kind of projecting a little bit from what you've just said, it would feel like a new blood type would only make sense with all of the ultra processed diets we have now. Because someone is bound to accept that within their body, right, over time. And it would make sense to me as well. But it's just a matter, I guess it's just teaching people a baseline and not telling them they have to be one or the other. And that's what I try to tell people who even chime in on my content. They're like, oh, it's just blood type dieting. I'm like, no, but that's the baseline. There's so much more to it. And when you add in other things like insulin, like when I started learning from Candy Frazier, she has some amazing teachings. And she actually taught how her husband, who had diabetes, she completely cured him. And she realized that a ribeye steak broke down into glucose. And most people didn't understand that. And when I first heard her say that, I was like, hold on a minute. I was like, I need to hear this. And it was basically breaking down because the amino acids break down into the liver, and that's where they're going to store the glycogen, right? So I
Absolutely.
know that's not, most common people don't really even want to hear
Mm.
that part, but that's basically what was happening. So she really is teaching, and where I started bringing in more than just the baseline of blood type with your insulin, and knowing when you're insulin sensitive during the day and that window of opportunity to eat, and the other window, which is like 12 to 14 hours of where you're not going to eat, and you're going to work with your circadian rhythm, which levels out your nervous system. Your whole gut microbiome is going to start, you're going to take in, because of the blood type, you're going to take in what you need. But then you're going to also pull in that insulin to where you're not taking in sugary foods, but you're taking those foods in at a particular time of day also. And then you're going to work and make yourself move in the adequate way that you're supposed to for even your baseline at that point, which is your blood type. And when you start to move like that, it actually, and then of course your gut microbiome, you get rid of leaky gut or any issues because of that baseline. Now you're moving your insulin to the right time of day. You're avoiding having severe insulin sensitivities at night where you're not getting any sleep, and it's messing up circadian rhythm. So it's like almost everything balanced out when I looked into that. And I started
Yeah.
talking to people about it, and they were just like, some people, that really wanted to know more, they were
Yeah.
like, oh, wow, this might be true. And I'm like, but you're struggling with, what I noticed from, even with, when I told you about when I met my twin flame, and everything
Mm.
went, like everything just went wild. But with all that brought into that spirituality, like some people have PTSD and other people are having trauma in their lives. I'm like, these things could actually help you, solve your problems. It can help you heal. if you heal at that gut level and then you move outward from there, it moves into your nervous system. And then you start doing somatic work, and all these things just come together. And it's not just a single concept, it's actually a whole entire snowball effect that scaffolds off of one another.
And the
And
problem with medicine though is what it does is it segments, right? So it'll go brain surgeon, heart cardiologist, cardiovascular, and they forget that everything's a whole. And I say you take a wheel off a car, see if that car drives, right? But for some reason we seem to think we could take the wheel off the car and it keeps driving. And I looked a lot like you into the circadian rhythm, and anybody coming to me that's stressed, I always say to them, "Do you wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning?" And they think I'm psychic, right? That's the first thing. And they look at me, they're like, "How did you know that? How did you know that?" And I explain about glycogen. I explain about the liver function from two in the afternoon to 3 in the morning. And it's when I give them the fix, it's almost so simple that they can't believe it. And when they get the results, they said, "Why didn't anybody tell me?" Which is basically have a complex carbohydrate before you go to bed at night. Literally, eat it, brush your teeth, sleep. And I explain about the insulin, and I explain about the glucose. I mean, the brain runs out of glucose. What it's going to do? It's going to try to get the glycogen from the liver. The liver's cleaning itself at that time in the morning. It doesn't want to give it up, so the body releases adrenaline. So I try to explain this to them, and then I give this to them, and they say, "Do you know, I've been to this specialist and that specialist. Why didn't anybody tell me this?" And I said, "Because they're not looking holistically. They're looking at you as a biological entity. You're a woman of a certain age, and therefore every single woman that comes in to see me must be the same." It's not, you know?
exactly, it's no bio-individuality. And that's exactly what matters, is the bio-individuality. But also, like you said, with the insulin, when someone's not sleeping correctly and they're waking up all night, you can explain that for everyone. It's just but they're still going to have their own bio-individual cure for that, or healing process for that. Um, so what
That's
other
all right.
questions do you
Yeah,
have?
yeah, no, no. I listen. I've got so many. I've got so many. I'm fascinated by um, people's journeys. I'm fascinated that I started my life as an actor. Okay. If you'd said to
Okay.
me that all that time ago, 31 years now, I've been in healthcare, and they've said, so if somebody said in 31 years' time or whatever, you're going to be a healthcare specialist, I would have said, "Oh, rubbish." You know what I mean? I thought I was going to tread the boards and all that kind of stuff. And but life has a way, it's almost like whatever you want to call it, you can call it the universe, God, whatever fits your particular belief, but almost says, "Do you know what? Go off and play. Go off and have some fun. Be a kid. Go off and be an actor. Go and play. Do your thing. But you know what? When the time's right, I'm going to come knocking, and it's time to learn." And it kicks you on the path, right? And there are several
It
times I've tried to come off the path, and every time I come off the path of healing, it kicks me even harder. It's my destiny, right? So listening to you, I can see it's the same for you listening to your story. So I want to know about, take me to Jessica the child. Let's go back. Take me to Jessica's background, upbringing, indoctrinated family beliefs. When and how did that change from the very biology teacher to this more holistic and understanding approach?
Well, as a child, I believe um, I was more rooted up until 33. I was more rooted in the 3D without spirituality altogether. My dad's family was Catholic. My mom's family, Baptist, Southern Baptist, two very strict types of religion. Although my parents, being in the military and we moved to a few locations, we were not really ever in a church at all. So that never came about to me. So I never grew up in an actual religion. I knew about it as I was with grandparents from both sides. There were French, Portuguese, and then Southern. So all of those sides of the families had different religious beliefs and in stricter realms of it, but nothing was ever really, pushed on me. So I kind of grew up as a little free spirit kid. And I was different as a kid because I was more of that kid that was finding animals that I wanted to bring home, and I wanted to heal everything. And I was picking flowers and kind of aloof in my own little way. And I would just be that kid that might be skipping through a field of flowers and have no clue what's going on around me sometimes.
The dreamer,
But
right?
Right. I was the dreamer kid, but at the same time, it was really weird because I was super grounded. And even now to this day, I feel it like I kind of have an edge of an ADHD feeling with my personality, but I think people still don't quite know how to process me because they see all this energy coming at them. And I was like this as a child too, but yet I'm very grounded. So they're like, which one is she? And because they can see that I'm grounded and highly intelligent when I speak, but at the same time, my ideas are all over the place.
That I, do you
And I
know,
did
it's
that as,
I sorry to interrupt. I resonate so much
no,
with that.
yeah,
It was I had somebody once said to me, they almost couldn't deal with the fact that I was had all this energy. It was like
right.
they didn't know what to do with it. It was almost like, suddenly I have to act a certain age. I have to be. I mean, I'm 60 now, right? And I feel like I'm still a kid. My eldest daughter, she's talking about one day when she has kids. I'm going to be that crazy grandfather. I'm never going to get old.
You are.
You know what I mean? I'm going to be the one. I took my kids out, kind of wild camping when they were young, and did things like that with them. You know what I mean? And I'm looking forward to doing that all over again. But it's interesting how that people want to fit you into a mold, because this is, let's say that their mold's down here, but that's not good. So they can't come up to you. So what they've got to do is pull you down to their mold. Oh yeah, now it makes sense. Now they fit into my life. And I remember as a child, it's quite lonely, because it's like
Very.
you've incarnated and you're an old soul in a young body. And I remember this one thought, which was, I cannot wait until my body is old enough for people to take me seriously. So people can
Wow.
judge the height of me as a body. Because they'll say things, oh, you're too young to understand. It wasn't because I was too young to understand. I understood, but they didn't. And their ego wouldn't allow them to admit that, because I was a child. And I think that I'm seeing a lot of these enlightened souls coming through now, the sensitivity and this energy that we give. People can't deal with it. And it's very hard. You've got to fight to be yourself. It's fascinating. So when you hear that, and especially because I had kind of a almost like a cultish background growing up, to be honest. And
Wow.
but I think that the childhood of that indoctrination of that spirituality, that quite dense spirituality, it sets you up actually to be quite strong. You can take more knocks than most people can. And I think you need that later on in life. You know what I mean? To do what you do, to be a biologist, but to be able to openly and understand biology, to then take Diamo's work and transmute it to language we can understand. I think that's fantastic.
And I feel too, and as I was listening to you as well, and you're talking about your past too. I think, and also from listening to a few of your other podcasts, I realized with some of their stories too, saying that also, if you were a child that had trauma, a lot of times I feel like those kids with trauma are actually the ones that are the chosen ones that are meant to actually, I said actually too many times, but they're meant
But it's
to
actually true.
evolve. It is true, right?
It's
It's
true.
actually
It's
true, right?
actually true.
They're meant for more. And we do become isolated. And I had some traumas as a kid as well. And you don't realize as a kid, you just think, why is this happening to me? But really it's happening for you because it's something, even though it may be really traumatic and horrible, and every person has a different journey from it and a different, a whole different, whatever has happened to them in life, right? But whatever that was, as deep as it was, or even if it's something simple that caused the trauma, it is something that caused them to level up. And it was a push from, spirit, God, whatever, you believe in. It was that push that said, you're meant to be higher than this, and this is where you're going to get stronger. And I feel like those people that those things happen to, they end up coming out on the top. Even if they're stuck in an ego at a moment, they're going to have those tower moments that push them further to where they say, okay, I'm tired of feeling like this. I'm sick of myself. I can't say this is happening to me. Now it's time for me to say it's happening for me. And I don't think you would ever get to that if you did not have something traumatic happen in your life.
I agree. And so that must have been quite interesting for you, because a military background, as like you said, a military brat, that's very controlling environment anyway, isn't it? Because it's very kind of
Very.
bang like this, and then you throw on the Baptist thing on top of that, which is bung, bum, bum again, right? So when did the young Jessica have that light bulb moment? Was it around 14 or was it younger than that?
Um, that I was different, you mean,
Yeah,
or
when
because
you sort of kind of went something's off, something's skew. I'm not like other people.
I think I was probably between 9 and 12, actually, because I noticed around the time of 9, but I don't think I was completely conscious. I just remember the things I was doing and that I was into were not whatever the fad was that was going on. I didn't even care about it. I would have friends that had the new shoes and they loved all these fancy things, and I would look at it and say, "Oh, sure," and then I would walk away because I was into something else that maybe not even anything to do with whatever's happening in that current time frame. And it takes me, and I noticed from a kid, it takes me forever to even like something that's brand new. And that may just be that stubbornness we were talking about earlier, where it's just I'm that grounded person and it takes a while for me to overthink it. That could be part of it too. But I've never been one to just jump on a fad. And I knew that as a small child. And I think probably around 12 years old in sixth grade, we had just adjusted from moving from one military base to here in Mississippi. And my dad was retiring here. And then as I began, we were in a military neighborhood with lots of different people again. And I was noticing at that, I guess I had gotten a little older because I had always been around people from all over the world by being on a military base. But I saw things so much different than those kids. And I felt so isolated because I would rather sit and talk with adults than I would go with the kids. And I would do the fun stuff in the street, playing kickball and all those sort of things. But whenever it came down to time to actually be in conversation, I didn't want to hang out and talk about the surface level concepts with the kids. I wanted it to be deeper than that. So I think then around that time, it really was inset in me around 12. And I wouldn't say exactly 12. It could be a little, maybe a year or so within that. But around that time frame, I knew that my thought process was totally opposite of most people. And
And,
I
and,
had
and
to find a different crowd.
I was going to say, I also don't think that it's by chance. Are you familiar with the Rubicon system?
I'm not.
Okay, so Rubicon is when Caesar marched on Rome, and Rome had become corrupt, and Caesar had been in battle, and he had his army, and he knew that he had to take Rome. And there's a river called the Rubicon, and when you're in Rome and you're looking down from, because Rome is up on hills, when you look down, there's this river, and once you cross that river, it's almost like a point of no return. You've been seen. And it's called the Rubicon because once you cross that, you can't go back. And then if you look at the Waldorf, look at Steiner, for example, and look at his theories, there's two Rubicons that are very important. One is 2 years old, where the consciousness becomes aware that this thing that I'm moving at the end of my hand, this thing at the end of the wrist is my hand, I'm doing it. And that creates turmoil in the child because suddenly from being this dream and everything just happens by itself. So the child starts kicking off, and we call it the terrible twos, which I think is a real disservice. And then the second Rubicon is 9, which is what happened with you. And 9 is the age where you become aware of mortality. You become aware of death. And around that era, time really what parents should start doing is keeping guinea pigs and gerbils and goldfish because they die. And it teaches the child about death,
Mhm.
right? But the next one is 12, and which is again with you.
Okay.
And nobody ever thinks about it. Why was Christ 12? Why was he 12 when he left? It's because it's part of the Rubicon. It's part of the Rubicon. He left. So Christ at 12 is the man. You become the man. So
So
he
it's
went.
awakening. Are
It's an
these
awakening.
awakening time?
Yeah, they're all
Okay.
awakening points of
Okay.
if you look at a lot of the systems, they believe that it takes 7 years for the soul to incarnate fully. So before it's
The
been.
only thing I knew from elementary school was that a 9-year-old is finally aware of, not that they weren't ever aware
Mm,
of something outside of themselves, but they're more conscious of other people's emotions and feelings. That's the
that's
part I knew.
Yeah. And 9-year-old, anybody who's got kids, I know when mine kids were 9, they suddenly cry for no apparent reason. They get clingy to you. They worry about death because they realize that life is not permanent, and it's a real
Mhm.
transition. You get the golden years, and then around about 13, it's just everything kicks off, and as a parent, it's like, oh God, So,
I know.
it's like,
I
the
do know. I have a 21-year-old, so I know.
But we forget, right? We were that person. We were that
Right.
21-year-old. We were that 40. I love the thing when my daughters used to say to me when they went through it, they used to say, "You don't understand. It's different for us now. It's not like the same. Oh, okay. I never had a heartache. I never had a heartbreak. I never had this. I haven't lived, So but as you
My
get
daughter's
older,
21 today. Today is
oh
her
wow. Oh,
21st
happy
birthday.
birthday to her. That's fantastic. Well, you know what it's like, right? And then what's
I
happened?
do.
And then you get older, and then they start bossing you around a bit and caring for you, and going, you can't do this, and you go, oh, here we
The
go.
whole circle of
Yeah,
life.
yeah, and it goes round. So the reason I was talking about this is because as you're talking, I'm going, wow, you're naming the Rubicons. You're going, 9 years old, Rubicon, 12 years old, Rubicon, and without even consciously aware of it, that's the enlightenment phase, and that's why I was fascinated especially with biology, because a lot of people who maybe do biology or science and stuff like that, they wouldn't think of star signs or energy or spirituality. It's just not on their
Right.
radar. So it's academia is quite snobbery, and
It's
it's
very.
very, my wife's in academia, and it takes a lot of courage to actually say, well, actually, science and spirituality, they match. So
They do.
so you've gone from sort of 9 years old, 12 years old. What was the next step after that for you?
I think, well, I had my daughter at 25, and I think I was a little bit lost around 23-ish. And and then I think I was in the middle of just living in the 3D and not really being super conscious of anything for a while, up until I would say probably that 33-year-old marker. In that time frame, I was my trauma was wanting to get out of my home where I was living with my family, and I went into a marriage I did not need to go into at all, and I had my daughter, so I just felt stuck there. It was just living life, basically. There was no real growth in that time frame. It was basically stagnation. And it was that summer where something clicked in me when I worked with that group of people at the Marine Institute and started working with those sea turtles, that I knew, okay, something's not, I can't keep going like this. And my daughter was around 7 years old, so that kicked it off. And I would say that I was, yeah, at that point I was probably married around 7 years, and I knew that my marriage was going to end at that point. I knew,
Wow.
because I knew that I had already kicked off, like I was in the wrong place, and I knew I could not stay there.
Do you
I
think do you
held
think the
off
sea turtles were a kind of a slight metaphor for that, in the sense that we collect the sea turtles, they're helpless, they're innocent, and then we put them into this great big thing called the ocean, and it's turmoil, but they go, right, and they survive and they thrive, and
they
to me, when
make it.
they make it, right, and I'm looking at you and I'm thinking you're that little sea turtle, and it's interesting how nature is
But
sometimes our greatest teachers.
only one out of 100 actually live in the nest. And that was my next journey, was, and it sent me into biology, but I took my kid along with me. And I was still married for another 5 years after that, but I delved deeply into sea turtle research. I took off and I went to study the leatherback sea turtle in Puerto Rico. I did a solo trip with a lot of teachers, and I'm still friends with some of them that work for NOAA, and all these great people I met there. I have great connections. And then I went to the Galapagos Islands. I mean, I really just kind of took off. And I knew, so around when my daughter was around 12, and I was at that point in my marriage, I finally was done. And I said, okay, I'm growing, but there's no growth here. And I knew that my journey was much deeper. And I still hadn't got deep into spirituality yet. it was more or less what I was getting for my calling. I was moving into that calling in biology. I started grad school, finished that, started teaching. I was still teaching elementary school while I was teaching college and at night. And I was just moving in a very slow pace, but I was getting there. And the spirituality is what really kicked in for me about 2 years ago when I met I met a twin flame, and I know a lot of people do not believe in that. Neither
Explain,
did
explain,
I.
explain about twin flames. A lot of people, this is, I know what that is. This is a term for a lot of people. There's a differentiation between soulmate and twin flame. So it's really important to explain
Right.
to people what a twin flame is and what is a soulmate, if you can.
Okay. I can. I'm not an expert on this, but
Mm.
I can explain to you what's happened in my journey.
Okay.
So from a twin flame, I do know when you meet, it ignites because when these two people meet, you're supposed to elevate each other. And mainly the feminine, which is either a woman or just the feminine energy, is the one that leads in the 5D or the spiritual aspect. So really what happens is either you're coming together with your twin flame just to elevate each other and never come back again, because you could have been siblings or you could have been family members in another lifetime. That sort of thing is a twin flame. Or you come together in that twin flame because you're one of the same soul, basically. That twin flame is your actual match in some cases as well. So there's a percentage on all of those. And if you are those, you are divinely protected along your journey, because you're going to be divinely split as you trigger each other. You're going to go off into a healing process and then you come back together. And I am closer to that now than I was 2 years ago, as far as leading in that 5D, because I understood what my work was. And my work was letting go of always needing to be chosen, just completely abandoning myself for someone else. And I didn't know this back then. So people that are not believing in it, I get you 1000%, because I had no idea and I thought it was bogus. But when I started living it, I realized what the reality was, and I knew I was chosen at that point. So all that just comes in whenever you just really and truly start, listening to your intuition. You start to understand it. So I feel like now with the twin flame, so that can happen with you. Either, you go your separate ways, but you will always feel your twin flame. You cannot cut cords, but they can actually just begin to like their energy will kind of regress in your life as the feminine energy in you will begin to rise. If that masculine energy in them does not, and they kind of stay where they're at in stagnation, it will just kind of fade from your life. But you will still feel them at times because they still are your twin. Now, a soulmate, when the soulmates come together, I believe if you're twins that are not meant to come back together, the soulmate is what comes after you've done the healing with the twin flame journey, because that person is your person that is meant to match you, and they're going to show up for you. And it's beyond the yin and the yang. It's actually I don't know the exact spiritual term for that, but they're meant to be together. Those two are going to always be. Help me out with the words on that, since you know this part too, and this is not
Well, I
my.
mean, I look at soulmate. I look at the easiest explanation of twin flame for me is it's the same soul split. So
That's
think of
right.
think of water and fire, and the problem with that, of course, you bring water and fire together, it makes steam, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the idea that you meet your twin flame. Sometimes your twin flame can, when they come together with you, can burn you so badly. It's like
Right.
you can't be together even in the same room, right? But
Mm-hmm.
you know that that's thing there, so you just recognize them. They recognize you, but maybe you go, okay, but I cannot. It's almost like, you come together and the magnet just draws on you because they've got the North Pole and the North and North. They repel each other. You know what I mean? The polarities. I think with a soulmate, for me, a soulmate I often think is a contract that's been made with souls life after life, and
Okay,
they
there you go. That's
and
better explanation.
they've been married again and again and again. One could play the role of male, one could play the role of female, and they can interact like that. You know what I mean? And I think that's soulmate, and it's quite interesting. My wife definitely comes into this category, and but when I met my wife, I met her at a time when I had to do things. I had to go through things like she hasn't got kids, I've got kids. I had to go through a whole bunch of stuff because that wasn't her stuff. So it was almost like her soul's going, right, okay, we'll wait for you to go ahead and do this. Do you know what I mean? I always remember saying to her, because I think it's what, 14 years difference between us. And I said to her once about, where were you all my life? And she said, I was being born. So, so,
Right.
you know, uh, you know, and but equally so, like you with your daughter, I think that I don't regret any relationship I've had. I've had some amazing, powerful women in my life that have triggered me, not triggered me, made me mad, made me happy, made me sad. But each one of those women has been incredible in my life. Reflectively,
Hmm.
I can look back
Sure.
reflectively and go, actually, they were really good. You know what I mean? The mother of my kids in case, a very strong woman, and she taught me so much. We sparked once in a while, but that's life, right? But
Yeah.
I had to go through that, and I don't regret my children because I believe that those souls chose to experience this, and I chose to be the parent to those souls. And I think you have
Hmm.
to go through it. My wife, I would say, is a very advanced soul in the sense that she didn't need to go through that. Do you know what I mean? So she came into my life when I'd caught up with her. She's younger, but more advanced, I would say.
5D, the feminine is always leading in the 5D, though, from my
100%.
understanding. Yeah.
100%. And you're possibly, I don't know if you listened to the podcast I did this week, it's just come out this week, with Georgie from Little Plough Kitchen. And we talked about conscious eating, and we talked about how we need more women in politics. And I said, my wish for the future is that we never have one person in politics. In fact, we either have a council of politicians that rule,
Hmm.
and there's a vote within that, or we have a woman and a man that are president and whatever the female equivalent of that would be. Do you know what I mean? So that there's the balance
Uh-huh.
because as I said in the podcast, women give birth, and if you give birth, you're very unlikely to want to send people off to be killed, right? Because
Right.
you've
That
given
makes
birth.
sense. Yeah.
So,
Yep.
but you need the masculine sometimes as well. It's a bit like become heavenly of no earthly good, no earthly good that too heavenly. You need that this kind of thing like that. I think where the women will pull up to the spiritual side and the men will pull down to the ground, that yin and yang. And I think you see that process right now. People are becoming aware of things like chakras and energy centers. If
Hmm.
you're doing somatic work, as you and I talked about before, a lot with the somatic breathing is to do with the sacral occipital pump. So as
Hmm.
you breathe in, your pelvis goes backwards, your head goes backwards, and if you breathe out, your head comes forwards, your pelvis tucks under. That pushes spinal fluid. We see it on MRIs now. The spinal fluid goes up and down. It's primarily alkaline, and it bathes the
Okay.
central nervous system. But we need this, and in the same way, we need feminine, masculine. If one of those pumps isn't working and is becoming like the top's becoming, too masculine or too feminine, the base is stuck as well. So I think the twin flame is there to ignite you, but the soulmate is that other side of the pump if you want. That's my understanding of it.
Okay. And the only one I know is, I mean, I can only vouch for my journey. And I don't know all of the terminology for most of it is my thing. I just knew my journey. And for whatever reason, because I sought counsel on it, I realized I didn't know what it was at first because I was struggling so badly. And I found out through counsel of my friend that I told you to contact. She's great, and you do need to contact her. She's
I'd,
amazing.
I'd,
I'd love
I'd,
to see her
I-
on here.
I'd love to have her on the podcast. I tried, but for some reason, I don't know what happened. But if she could email me, that'd be brilliant. Yeah, get her to email me.
I'll tell her to email you then
Great.
too. But we were talking, and if through her counsel, I realized that my twin was actually meant to come back with me. So, and I don't know all the technicalities behind the teachings of all of that. I just knew the work that I was supposed to do for that to happen. And I'm going to continue on my journey to find out what all of that is, obviously, because I'm getting closer to that union. So I feel it all, you feel it within you. I know for sure, even with the soulmate, I still feel you feel it. And as it's coming into union, and it's not really about the union itself. It's about what you've turned into as the person on the inside. Like you've actually internalized a lot of things. Like my whole thing was, is in meeting with my twin was that I would have this massive anxiety of not being chosen all the time, which is a negative thing, right? Like people would be embarrassed to say that. I'm not anymore because I started my journey. Like, what do you mean I'm not chosen? But now it's like you become less egotistical and you just, lean into that support and where you're supposed to be on your journey. And you're like, no, I was actually struggling with anxiety of being chosen, and I needed to learn how to have patience. And I needed to learn, even though you want to call the other person an avoidant or whatever, it's not all that person. That person is yes, they have their specific things that they need to heal, and you've triggered them and they've triggered you, but it's never one-sided. And when I learned that the feminine led, I was like, okay, I'm the one that has to do the initial work. And I started, and I really went back into myself, and I healed that self. And I knew then what my journey was. Whether or not I was going to be reunited or not didn't matter. I just needed to get that work done. And it was just rooting back from one of my traumas as a child of not being chosen, being the cast aside child. And that was pulling into every relationship I ever had. And it opened your mind up, like you said, that every woman in your life actually had a purpose for you. I felt that way at some point. I just kind of like, my mind just enlightened me that every relationship I'd had was something that was a catalyst that pushed me forward. And I
It's
knew,
I was going to say
sorry.
it's absolutely true, and I think that listening to you and talking about the not being chosen, for me it became not wanting to be chosen.
Right. That's what it was. You were
I didn't,
subconsciously
yeah,
pushing it.
yeah. I mean, for me, I now I've more, I don't want to be. When I remember going to college and I was put forward as we have, I don't know if you're in college in America, but here we have union reps. They represent, like your class representative. I don't know what they call it there, but every time I was in school, I was put forward as class rep. I was put forward as this rep, like people trying to push me into these positions of leadership. And my actual thing is, I don't want to be a leader, because my feeling of being a leader is you stand out, you're seen, and you're a target, right? So, so it was like, don't choose me, do not choose me. So it's the opposite. And then when you realize as you get older is
That's
that,
our Virgo too, because we
yeah,
don't want to be seen. That we did not want to, we don't
no,
want to be seen, but yet we need to be seen because we are leaders.
I know, but we hate it.
Right.
I
It's
hate,
true.
I love a Virgo. One thing about Virgo is that Virgo is a sign of service, aren't they? We love to serve. But
Right.
but
All the
but
time.
I will serve. But then somebody tries to put me in leader position. No, 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 it's fine. It's just you. You do it over there. I'll empower you. No, 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 no. It's that resistance. But maybe there's something that calls for souls in the world with everything going on right now for us to stand up and be counted. Maybe this is the
And
time where,
receive. I,
yeah.
I feel like that was what part of it was, because this is not actual my specialty, but as far as speaking on my own journey, my problem is stepping into my feminine energy out of my masculine energy and actually learn to receive. Because I never receive, even if someone wants to give me something, and I get like kind of a panicky kind of, like, oh, even if it's the simplest thing, like, here, let me just buy you a coffee because I'm nice, if somebody in front of you in line, then I automatically wanted to give them something. And I've learned now, don't do it, because it's actually insulting, because someone did something nice to you. And I had an older gentleman, probably like 80 years old, maybe. He was in front of me one day. I didn't know him. I was at a coffee shop, and he said, I'm going to buy this lady here whatever she wants. And at first I was like, oh no. And then I remembered, okay, don't do it, because I stepped up and I said, oh no, sir. I said, it's okay. And he told me, because he was in a good energy at that time, as he'd been through life, and he said, do you know it's very insulting if you don't take something when someone offers it? And I was like, yes sir, I will accept the coffee. And I knew, I was like, I've been working on this, what are you doing? It's just a coffee. And it was so nice. I had a wonderful conversation with him after that, and I explained to him and kind of not really apologized, but
Hmm.
explained to him what I was working on, and he thought it was great, but he was like, don't do it. And I was like, okay, that's more confirmation that I needed to step out of the energy I was in. I need to get out of my masculine energy.
It's
And
it's
that
a
was a great example.
It's a really good one. There's a really good one I heard on the kind of slight reverse of that, where there was when Buddha was young and he was traveling around and teaching, and he came into this village, and this person comes up to Buddha and starts really having a go at him. He's very angry. Who are you to come along and tell us spirituality and how to live our life and everything else? And he stopped him and he said, if I give you a gift and you don't accept the gift, who does it belong to? And the man, well, it belongs to me, of course. And he says, so is it with your anger on your way. So
Right.
so it's that kind of, when do we accept, when do we don't? And many a time I've done things like, randomly I'll be in the queue or something like that, and I have this thing I do which is acts of random kindness with no expectation of return. So I'll see somebody shopping or whatever, and I'll quickly go in front of them and pay the shopping. But the thing is to do it, but you're not doing it for reward, praise, or anything. You're doing it just
Exactly.
because you're doing it. And then one day, it's not like you're kind of accumulating points for heaven one day either, right? You just do it because it's the right thing to
No.
do. And sometimes, you know what? I'm in a queue or something and I don't do it. It doesn't feel right. But sometimes it just feels right. And I had this one thing happen to me. And one day when I pass from this life, of all the things I've done in my life, you're going to think this is really crazy, but there was a girl once, and I'm running for the train. This is London. I don't know if you've ever been to London, but it's like any city in the world. It's high,
Been
it's
only
pace, pace,
one
pace.
day I was in London.
Yeah, it's pace, right? It's pace. I got on the tube,
Very
run for the
fast.
tube, going for the train, and as I'm running to get my train, there's this girl on my left, and she's crying. I don't know why she's crying, but suddenly my soul just went stop. So there was a shop on the right, and I ran in. I bought some flowers, some roses, ran over to her, and I said, I don't know why you're crying, but I hope this helps. Now, first she thought I was trying to sell her flowers and whatever. And I said, no, they're just for you. I hope it helps. And I got the train. I don't know to this day who she was, what was going on. I hope one day when I part this life, I want to know what happened. But I felt amazing. And I'm
She may
not,
find your podcast one day.
one day she might listen to the podcast and go, oh my God, that was that guy. You know what I mean? But it's those things where you can think, I did something today that was important. It wasn't about money or fame or anything else like that. So because you grew up in this very military kind of background, so it must was that quite
Yes.
hard to break it? I mean, how did your family take it when there was the shift in you?
Well, really and truly, my parents were kind of detached anyway, so they didn't really pay attention too much as far as what I was doing as a child anyway. They didn't really, we were the Gen X kids, we were kind of those latchkey kids. And as I got older, they didn't, at first, a lot of things I was doing, it wasn't really spiritual, but the way I was running my life, at first they would try to like say things to me about my life. But as I got older, I got much more verbal with how I was doing things. And especially my mom, she got a little bit not scared of me, obviously, but like fearful to say things to me because she knew I would not hold my tongue any longer.
Yeah, we
So
call it
they
we
don't.
we call it in England being lippy.
Right. And they
When
don't
someone's
really
being
mess with
lippy.
me. They don't really mess with whatever my life is. They're just kind of like, she does something and we don't know. They're like, because we don't want to challenge that. Because I will say something back. I will defend myself. Obviously not disrespectful, but just standing up for what I believe. And it's fine. You do what you're doing, but I'm going to do what I'm doing. It doesn't matter what you think about it, kind of thing. And I am one of those people that I absolutely do not care what anyone thinks about me. Like, I'm like that now. I will go outside if someone dares me just to go dance in the street or something with a ton of people. I'll do it. I don't care. It's like, whatever, but someone is going to resonate with that and they're going to love it. And it might even help someone's bad day be better. And I wanted to tell you a story I thought about when you said about the flowers. One day I was having a horrible day, just a regular day, and I was walking. Our downtown I live near a beach. So I walk the beach when I get like that. And I was walking into this children's park and just to walk to their restroom that day. And when I walked in, there were some teachers from an elementary school, and they had some fifth gradish, sixth gradish kids there, and they were mentally challenged. Okay. And they're working with these kids and they're teaching them different concepts in life. So they made them write these little letters for people that said, like, you're beautiful and I hope you have a wonderful day, and just all these different little like post-it notes. Well, as I walked in, a kid had a crumpled little sheet of paper and he walked up to me and he handed it to me. And of course I took it. I am used to kids with teaching, and I opened it up and it said, "You are beautiful and I hope your day is amazing." And I
Oh,
still have that letter in my car on my visor. I said, "This is amazing. And I love this concept." I hugged the child. I went about my day, and you know what I did? I got some post-it notes and I started making little notes that said, "You've got this. It's not as bad as you think." And I would post them in different places just on certain days that I felt led. And just for anyone just to find that, because I was like, that's going to make someone else's day because it made mine.
I love that. I remember once thinking about doing the same with business cards and leaving them on the train somewhere. Do you know what I mean? I got
Yeah.
a fortune cookie recently. Though my wife and I just laughed about it because I was moaning about something, and I got this fortune cookie and I opened it and it said, "Life's tough. Get over it."
Well,
I
sometimes
thought,
you need a
yeah,
shove.
yeah, fair. I need a grounding. You know what I mean? Fair point. Thanks, fortune cookie. You know what I mean? And of course, my wife got one that said something like, "Oh, you're amazing," or whatever. And I thought, yeah, of course. You know what I mean?
And maybe you were just complaining because you had a melted chocolate in your box or your soup
Yeah,
wasn't warm.
something. Yeah,
So
get over yourself. You know what I mean? Grow up. So tell me where you're at now. How? Because I want people to reach out to you. What does your work look like now? Do you work with people? Do you help people? What is that?
So right now, what I have is I created a website along with I have a YouTube and my TikTok, and I also have a Facebook page. I couldn't get it in the info I sent you correctly, but I can try to manage to get it to you some other how. But I have
Sure.
those
Yeah.
three,
What
and
are they? If you give them to me now, because I want to. How
um,
can people reach out to you? So,
they're all nutrition ignition.
okay, so nutrition ignition,
Yep,
the same. Obviously,
correct,
TikTok is where I came across you. So and so they can find that on all those three platforms. Yeah,
correct. Yep,
and
nutrition ignition on.
and they can email you? Can they via those and stuff like that?
The email, I was going to say, I built a website. So my website is on all those platforms.
Okay.
And my email is in there at the bottom. So you can email me if you have questions, of course. You can also message me on any of those platforms as well. I also have in my website, and then there's also links on each one of the platforms that goes to, I have a free beginner's blood type guide and a 48-hour reset that are a restoration is what I call it. But it's basically a reset for the body. And that within that 48-hour frame, those are free, completely free. And then I have two paid products that I've made. One is a 7-day workup, and it's already worked up for you baseline off your blood type, but it brings in some other concepts too into those 7-day meal plans with a little bit of movement in there as well. But it's just designed on one basic person, a healthy type A, a healthy type B, whatever you are. But I also have a 30-day personalized workup, and that is where it has there's a questionnaire that you go in and fill out after you've purchased it, and then I do the work to set it up for you based around all of your personalized info. And it asks you things like, weight, what are you struggling with? It asks any kind of allergies. It asks, really deep questioning, and I go in and do really deep work on that. And I just finished with a man. Actually, I had a gentleman reach out to me from Europe, Sweden, and it was my first gentleman person that I've had, a client. And I worked with him, and I was so nervous in the beginning because I was like, I'm used to women, because
Mm.
his message said, I love your content and I know you can help me. I was like, okay, with the pressure
Yeah,
here.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
Just
but I
yeah.
did. I helped him and I set everything up and he told me it was amazing and he has another 10 days left on his 30 days. So I will find out in the end. He told me he'll write up a testimony for me, but
Good.
he said he's feeling wonderful. So I even help, gentlemen, if you want to reach out to me and
Yeah.
I can write up something for you there as well. So it's not really gender based, but I do mainly speak to women because I'm a woman and I
I
understand our hormones better.
Yeah, my wife's the same because she's her primary thing. Funny enough, she's a lecturer at a university as her main thing. She's
Oh,
in a master's program because she's a senior paramedic. So very much funny enough, you parallel quite a lot. And then she trained as a health coach and as well.
nice.
Yeah, so
I bet
in
I could talk to her for hours
Oh,
too.
you guys. I should hook you up. Actually, you'd get on really well. She's a great person if you ever wanted. I do a bit of blood work and stuff. Taking blood and all that kind of stuff. So, but that's more her baby. And hers is very much the female thing, cortisol levels and all that kind of stuff. So, you
Does she
guys,
have an affiliate program? I was going to say I haven't affiliated with anyone because obviously I'm not a
yeah,
practitioner.
yeah.
So I'm more in the education field.
I'll give
So
you her
I don't
details and you can do a
cool.
Zoom call or something because I think it'd be really good. The problem that we have in the UK is if you have insurance like you're doing giving advice here, it's kind of a very funny thing. Here like you can do it in this country and then I mean I suppose she could work with you and then you could use that knowledge in the States. That would work, you know what I mean? But
Sure.
yeah, definitely. So because I'm really when I came
I'm
across your
looking at a couple things. I'm looking at a couple things to be an affiliate because I saw someone, I'm sorry, on your TikTok
yeah,
when you introduced me last week.
yeah,
There was a lady that said, hey, does she do hormonal, I guess like blood draws? And I
great.
don't have the ability to do that, but I was looking for an affiliate to be able to do that for clients because that would be amazing.
Oh yeah, 100%. And it's I mean obviously the problem with the blood draws is it would have to be the UK, wouldn't it? Because it's
You have
UK,
to
but
send it.
you have to send well, the like for example, there's an omega-3 6 ratio I do a blood test for, but it's a finger prick test, so I can send the kit anywhere in the world. That's not a problem. So
Hmm.
basically the big problem we're finding now is the omega-6s are way out of balance and people are inflamed, crazy inflamed. But
Yep.
the problem is the polyphenols in the omega-3s have to be really good and stabilized, and a lot of the products they're not. So the products I use are very stable polyphenols. But definitely if they can get the blood, we can send the blood kit, they can get the blood kit, someone to do the drawing of the blood. That's not a problem. Once we've had the drawing of the blood, then we can get the results wherever. That's not a problem. I don't know in
Perfect.
terms of stabilization and blood and transport, though, that's the only problem because you've got to get to the lab in the UK.
Right.
So,
That's true too. But I know, no, I see what you're saying about the omega sixes are really bad in
really bad,
inflammation, right?
really
Horrible,
bad.
especially in eggs. Eggs that are a
Yeah,
really good food, for
yeah,
most people, not
yeah,
all, but for
yeah,
most, and at least a neutral food for a lot of people. It
yeah.
like you can barely find eggs that are not saturated in omega 6.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's insane.
I mean, we're lucky because we're surrounded by organic farms where we are. And in the UK, supermarkets are very different to the States. You go into the UK supermarket and the soft drinks and the artificial drinks is a very small amount, you know. But we have
That's
the
amazing.
supermarkets really, all supermarkets have organic meat, organic vegetables. It's been around for a while now, and we have organic farms where we are as well. So we just go down to the farm. So
Nice.
it's getting that ratio. And as a blood type A, you know, like you say, I definitely do better with with the chicken.
Right, chicken or a little bit of turkey maybe
Yeah,
too.
yeah. So, okay, so I want people to reach out to you. So we've got those contact details. Okay, so I'm going to ask you that question. Your favorite quote. I do this to all my guests. The reason I do it, really, I'm thinking about it, is because I have a favorite quote, and the reason I ask your favorite quote is because often it tells me a lot about a person, why they chose that quote. There's something that resonates in them. And I think about my favorite quote was from Gandhi. But then I look at Gandhi and I suppose he overcame adversity, didn't he? So
Mhm.
that's why I look at that. So what's your favorite quote? And then I want you to tell me why it's your favorite quote.
Okay. So I got confused when you asked me that at first, but then I said, as soon as you clarified it for me in the email. I said, it popped right into my head because I say it a lot. You don't have to see the whole staircase to take the first step, because if you have the courage to take the first step, the staircase appears.
Love it.
And that is like, it's bigger than a quote, but I just always keep that inside of me, because I've not only told students that, but when I started marketing with a team, I was with a team in the beginning. And my mentor, I had a mindset mentor, and was really breaking us down in who we were. That was one of the main things that he taught. And I know it came from Martin Luther King originally, but then like Jim Rohn and Ed Milet and all these other people like Robert Kiyosaki, and I used to listen to them every single day, like on rotation, and they would all talk about that. And I was like, that is so true, because if you can just gain enough courage right now in the moment to take one tiny step in the right direction, the rest of the staircase does appear. But you have to
courage.
Right. And I want to bring this back to where I'm at anyway, too, just real quick. And then I know we'll have to go. But when you have that courage, you get that courage by listening to your intuition. Your intuition becomes clearer and louder whenever you work in alignment with your body, meaning your food, your intake, and your movement. And also because it clears up your mind, you move right into that direction. And that first step is going to take you all the way to the end. And to me, I feel like that all of that together, it's not a quote, it's actually a lifestyle, I think. But that quote is what brought me into like that feeling of that lifestyle, is knowing that whatever my intakes are, even if that's the people around me, because the people around me are also part of those intakes, and they're going to be part of where that courage comes from also, to take that first step and to see the full staircase, because I'm going to be in the wrong direction if I'm in the wrong environment. Right.
Oh, totally.
So it all scaffolds, and that staircase, you will get to the top of the stairs if you get the courage to actually listen to your intuition and work in alignment with your biochemistry.
It's true. It's true, because you have to. I heard another one the other day, which is there's no remote control. Get up and change the channel yourself. And
right. When we were kids, who was the remote? We were
the remote, right? Exactly. And look now, it's like you don't even have to use a remote. You just talk to it, turn over, change channel, feed me, No, it's lovely. And I love that idea. I remember a spiral staircase as a child, and it was one of those funny things, because you can go down very quickly. It takes more effort to go up, right? And I always remember about it.
Slide too.
It
when
is,
you ran up the slide.
Yeah, snakes and ladders. You remember? 1 minute you're up, 1 minute you're down. Listen, it's been great to chat to you. This is going to go out real soon. This is go out very, very soon, because I want to get my listeners out. So this will be on YouTube. It's going to be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's going to be in America. It's going to be in, really honestly, some of the places this podcast goes to, I've never heard of them. You know what I mean? Really dark as deep as wherever. So yeah. Let everybody know, and it'd be great. I'm going to definitely, I'm going to give my wife's details. I'm going to give your details.
I would love that.
Yeah, you guys are going to be great. Two Virgos, chat. It's going to be. she's gonna go. Oh, what have you done now? But
you're gonna regret. You're gonna regret.
Yeah, it'll be fine. She's going. I'm going over to America to see Jessica. So it's fine. I'm going to Tibet.
No, hang on. I want to go to Tibet, so I'm just going to follow both of you.
Okay, all right. We'll all meet in Tibet. We'll get hold of Georgie and come and get her to come with us as well. My last guest, because she cooked up in the Himalayas with a Tibetan monk.
Oh, wow. That's what I've been wanting to do.
Go listen to it. So it's out there now.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, it's called Little Plow Kitchen. Reach out to her. All her details are there. And just mention me. She's the YouTube one's going out today, but the podcast is out ready. So it's my latest
So I can reach out to her too?
Yeah, just go to Zen Footsteps and just listen to the podcast. And at the end, like you, she gives details on how to get in contact.
So quickly, I wanted to tell you, because one of my dream trips that's left on my bucket list, there's two. The one is going to Patagonia and Argentina, but the other one is going to Bhutan and Tibet.
Right,
I haven't been to those two yet.
I think that's where she was. They're the happiest people in Bhutan, by the way. Do you know that?
Really?
Yeah, the reason
I
for it,
did not know.
there's a program on it, and the reason they're happy was Ben Fogle is a kind of a pioneer down here, to like adventurer, and the reason it's so happy is because it's quite a tough life, and winters are hard, and the community depends on each other so much, so you can't be selfish. You know, you could die in the winter from the
That's
cold.
amazing.
So because of that, apparently one of the most happiest places. They have very little, but they're incredibly happy. So it's quite amazing.
And
But
I and because of that, I knew they had very little, and
mm,
I wanted to climb to the top of the Tiger's Eye Nest
yeah,
and meditate with a real monk because I think it's 13,000 feet, and I actually climbed 15,000 feet in the
wow,
Peruvian Andes. I went on a
wow.
solo hiking trip there, and I didn't tell you about that. It would take a lot longer, but
Okay.
anyway, I was at those heights, but anyhow, I wanted to go up there and I was like, I want to meditate with a real monk.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
I felt like Bhutan was actually the place for that.
I've heard it's heard. I mean, I think mine are Japan. My wife and I want to go to Japan desperately, and
Oh,
Machu Picchu is the other one that
I've
I
been twice there to
oh
Machu
I want to
Picchu.
do that. I want to do the trail though. I don't want to get the
Do it.
train. I really want to do that. And it's
You
there's
want
all
to
the
go on the train? You
no
said the train?
no.
Did too.
I want to do the 4 day trek.
Okay, yeah, I did both. I did the trek and I also did the train. The first one I did the train. They're both an amazing
Okay,
experience.
all right, that's good to know.
So if you maybe want to go in one way and come out the other, because that train is so cool. And they have
Uh,
a traditional festive on the train.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really amazing. I spent a month in Peru and then I went back and spent 2 weeks in Peru.
Wow. Because they've got
So
they
it's,
because there's a portal there. I don't know if you remember it, but when you go up, there's a portal, and
oh no.
it looks like a closed door. It looks like a solid piece of. It looks like it should be a door there. You know, like somebody would have a door frame, but it's a solid within the door frame, just solid rock.
Okay,
So,
yes.
and I'd love to go there because there's something I
I don't
came
know where
across.
that is.
Yeah, it's right at the top apparently, and it's there's this whole kind of tradition, esoteric tradition to open it, which
Maybe Pichu?
yeah, and it's you open it with what's called the seven keys.
Wow.
And the interesting thing about the seven
Okay.
keys, they're not physical keys.
Sure. Right. Yeah, they're more
Mhm.
mental, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll
I
tell you at
haven't
some
done
point.
that.
Yeah, yeah,
Well, I wish I would have heard about that when I went because I did a really incredible. I went all the way to the top of Salcantay Trek for
yeah,
15,000 feet,
yeah.
but they didn't tell us about the door. I
Yeah,
wish they
no,
would have told us about that.
literally it's like a piece of stone. Like imagine somebody's like there's a stone and then there's like a you'd imagine someone's carved like an archway, but it's just stone. So you think it's almost like someone's carved an archway and they haven't finished by then cutting through and then putting a door in it. It's just a piece of rock, and
Wow.
it's really fascinating. So yeah,
Maybe that was the one that was closed when we went there due to all the it was slippery on the steps in Huayna Picchu, and that may have
yeah,
been where it's at.
yeah. What's interesting because they seem to close a lot of these places recently, like the pyramids. Now they were discovered underneath the pyramids, so there's pillars underneath them now with spiral
I saw.
staircases going. Guess what? They've closed that as well. Isn't it interesting how they seem to close things?
I know. There's
They're
a
again.
reason they closed them.
They're sneaky.
All that all that spirituality that we know about
I
now and
know,
that we're on those
I know,
journeys, it's
I
all
know.
coming to light.
Yeah, yeah, but you can't know about it.
I
Great.
know.
Listen, we better go. We're
Okay.
gonna be like
Go,
this is
go.
gonna be a 2 hour podcast. Lovely to talk to you. And like I said, I'm gonna get this out real soon. Okay. All
Okay.
right. You
Thank
take
you,
care.
Jean. You have a
Take
wonderful
care.
day.
Take care. Bye.